put this woman who's in this loveless marriage, feeling trapped, and you do have an affair. The person you have an affair with is Peter. So you're having an affair with from your husband, with your real life husband. Yeah. How was that, and how did those conversations go?
Now, in high definition, this is breaking news from ABC7 News.
Good morning, I'm Cameron Ridle, and it is my sad duty to report to you that Officer David Moore has passed away. Officer Moore's death comes 3 days after he was shot 3 times during a traffic stop in the 3400 block of Temple Avenue. A live news conference is scheduled to get underway at any minute, where we will hear from Officer David Moore's parents, Lieutenant Spencer Moore and Sergeant Joanne Moore. This press conference comes 1 day after a press conference is called telling the media that Officer Moore's parents were in the process of giving him back to God, as he was on life support and doctors said he would not recover after being shot by 50-year-old Thomas Hardy. ABC7 News has learned that Officer David Moore died this morning at 6:15 after his condition deteriorated overnight. Let's go live to the news conference at Wishard Memorial Hospital for the latest from Officer Moore's parents.
He remains on life support so that he can continue to do what he always did best in his life, and that's serve others. We have authorized that his organs be harvested and allowed to be transplanted to those needing it. As my daughter said this morning, his sister, I think so appropriately, sometime today there's going to be several people who will receive an amazing phone call, because David is going to continue to live through them, and he's going to help them have a better life. We cannot be any prouder of that. Our son, we were proud of him to be a police officer. He loved this job. And these people that are standing behind us, I think, loved him and loved the work that he did. And I think as a community, he made us all proud of who he is. And I say is because it's not going to change. David served this community with every thread and effort of his body, and he does not regret this sacrifice. We think he was cut down too short in a young life and possibly had other things he could have done. But today, or at least later this evening, he's going to do the most he can by continuing to provide a better quality of life for those who need it. If you have any questions of me or my wife, David's mother will be more than happy to answer that. And I think by protocol, if anyone else has, they'll at least identify or you'll know who they are. I do want to say thank you so much to the community of Indianapolis. I'm proud my son served you. I'm proud he will continue to do so. I'm proud he's a member of a family as fine and as wonderful as the Indianapolis Police Department, led by the people who are standing behind us now, who have been immeasurably supportive of us during this time. And I also want to thank you, or at least thank the people here at the hospital. I started to say General Hospital. Boy, that's a throwback, isn't it? At Wishard Hospital, these people here could not have been better. They cared for David in a very caring fashion and did everything that was possible within medical science to save him, and it was just not possible. And I cannot tell you how great we felt and how trusting we felt in placing the most precious thing that we have in their hands.
Spencer, you might want to move the microphone around a little bit. Joe, you're a cop and you're a mom. Tell us what you think.
A mom never wants to bury their child. But if David had to go, this is the way he would have wanted to go. He would have wanted to go for the community he served. That boy worked harder than anyone I know. He put my police work to shame, and I always thought I was pretty darn good. And he loved the city. He has a tattoo on his upper right shoulder that he designed. It's Indianapolis Police Department patch. It has 3 sets of numbers on it. It has 708, which is his dad's first badge number, 968, which is my first badge number, and 755, which was his first badge number. So if any son was born to do this and to die the way he did to protect others, it was my son. As a police officer and a sergeant on the finest Metropolitan Police Department, I am so grateful that our men acted professionally, are investigating this, and doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason, and keeping David our warrior. And I'm going to go back to work and do a darn good job. I want you to know, too, that David is comforting me. People have said I am strong. I'm only strong because my son is making me that way. And the one way to get through this is to donate his organs that we developed. And they're going to give hope to other families. So I can get through today with my son passing, because there are other families who are getting a beautiful phone call. And I hope that he saves them. Somebody's going to get a darn good heart.
We think that it's up to 8, or maybe as high as 10, depending on how things go. But that's enough. Yeah, that's a conjecture. One thing I do want to say outside this, and you've heard this said by some of the people behind me, folks, we're going to celebrate the life of a warrior. We're not going to be distracted by other things. We're not going to talk about his death. We're going to talk about the fact that he lived a life that anyone would be proud of, and particularly his parents could be proud of. And to hear his mother talk, you can well easily see the pride and the joy that she has in him. And we'll always carry him with us. And I love the picture that the media chose, that big crooked smile of his. And that was David. I don't know what else to tell you. I'd be more than happy, again, to take questions, or any of these other people I'm sure will.
Spencer, was there a certain time or certain age where David said, I want to be a cop like my mom and dad? Do you remember a moment?
I'll let the boss answer.
I personally think that when several things happened with David, first of all, both parents are police officers. Secondly, when he was 7, I took him downtown and he watched Matt Faber's funeral procession pass in front of police headquarters as I lifted him up over the barrier of the city market. When Teresa Hawkins passed away, David was older, and he said, Mom, are you going? And I said, yes. And in my heart, he's in that car in that funeral procession for Teresa. I think that's when he decided. I really do.
There's a little story that we have in the family that when Joanne decided to be a policeman, David became very distraught, and she found him crying one morning. He was about 4, I guess. And she wanted to know, why are you crying? And he said very simply, if my mommy's going to be a policeman, who's going to be my mommy? And from that point forward, we started calling them police women, so that little boy would know that she would still be Mom.
4-year-old's perception of terminology. I felt pretty bad.
It started early, and it lasted quite a while, not as long as we would last, but I'm telling you, folks, a lot of people have complimented us about who we are and the strength that we've showed, and we do want to do that. But that boy was twice the man I am, 10 times the police officer, without a doubt. And he taught us a lot of things, and he still does. And I hope he's teaching the community that young men like him are willing to serve and willing to die so that we do have a better community.
You mentioned the strength that you're showing, and you're both showing remarkable strength. What do you attribute that to? I mean, how are you able to sit here before everyone and speak your minds and say the things you're saying? Where do you draw your strength from now?
There's a fella laying upstairs that we draw it from. It's David, because we know him and we know how he was. He he understood certain things, and we don't want to in any way sully his thoughts or his reputation. We're doing this because of him, and when we get the strength knowing that this is what he would want. I just wish you all could have got to know him, other than that silly grin in that newspaper. Although I will say he probably would have very much enjoyed that he pushed the president over to one column in the newspaper this morning and had the rest of it to himself. That's that would be something that he would got a kick out of.
Do you remember your last conversation with David? When was it? What was it about?
David had a way of calling you and saying, "Hey, Dad, what are you up to?" And then you'd say, and then we talked about that. I talked to him. In all honesty, I talked to him Sunday morning about 5 or 6 o'clock. There was a church up in Carmel that I've been asked to help plant, in other words, and he's a friend of the person who has that church. And I was calling him to verify that the church meeting was still on, and we had a conversation about that. We had already been up there the week before to help, and we were planning on going back up there that evening.
What about you, Mom?
The last time I had the pleasure of talking to my son was Saturday. I've worked day shift southeast for 13 years, and he would blow me so much stuff. I worked hard today, Mom. There's nothing on your unit history. I said, first of all, I'm a supervisor. We do things a little different. And he called me Saturday, and he said, Mom, this is my first day on day shift. He told me everything he did. And I said, so what do you think? And he said, I'm going to like this shift. And what he didn't realize is day shift is very hazardous, because when something happens on day shift, it's usually very ugly, and he met evil. But that was the last time I had the pleasure of talking to him.
One of the last times that I had, I remember this when he was talking to me about his job there, and he was saying that, you know, Dad, they've talked to me about doing some special units, which he had done. And he said, but I don't want to do that anymore. I just want a district where I can take care of the people on it. That makes me happiest. There are people out there who need this. And he had been doing this, and he reiterated a real quick story. He said, I had a lady stop me on the road the other day on the sidewalk, and she said, Officer, I've lived in this neighborhood for over 40 years, and I could count on my fingers of one hand the number of times I've seen a police officer in this area. She said, last 2 or 3 weeks, I've seen you through here 40 times. And he said, you know, she's probably right, Dad, because I just keep rolling. I just keep going. And that's, if you want to say, we had an Energizer Bunny on this department, it was him. He never quit. They tell me the CAD shows that he had like almost 20 investigations, 9 stops on Sunday morning before 9 o'clock. That's unusual. It really is. He was dedicated to this job and the people.
Did David ever express to you any concern?
You've been listening to a live press conference with the late Officer David Moore's parents from Wishard Memorial Hospital. Stay with ABC7 News for continuing coverage on Officer David Moore and his death, as well as on the trial of Thomas Hardy. I'm Cameron Riddle. We'll return you now to regular programming.
Murder, racketeering, all of these things are difficult. Usually winds up being, well, what did you do with the money?